Hello.
Enough said.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
This oh we're gonna this is say this. Now I say this about a lot of Torah portions. That Torah portions each Torah portion is so full of information, so full of messages, takeaways, etc., etc. But um I without seeing this anywhere, I've always maintained that Parshat Chukat, this week's parsha, more than any other parsha in the entire Torah, has stuff. There is more in this parsha, storylines, events, packed into one parsha than in any other Torah portion in the entire Torah. First of all, it starts off, the first aliyah is all about the red heifer, which is a very fascinating and entire world of discussion in and of itself. The process of the red heifer, not only what a red heifer is, but what the process of using the ashes of the red heifer to purify somebody who's come into contact with the dead body. So it is a very fundamental, back in the day, a very fundamental aspect of Jewish life. And that is why a red heifer, which is a key ingredient, has always held such a prominent place within Jewish law and Jewish lore, that we constantly talk about it, etc., etc. Then we go on in the second aliyah, and then we talk about the passing of Miriam. Right, the second aliyah is the passing of Miriam. The Jewish people, the rock stops giving its water. The Jewish people complain. Moshe hits the rock, and after God tells him to talk to the rock, and God condemns him at that point to not be able to enter the land. Right, its own incredible story. The passing of Miriam, its story of the Jewish people complaining, Moshe hitting the rock, and what it costs him. That's its own story. The next aliyah are actually, that's the next two aliyahs. The next two aliyahs are talking about what becomes a common refrain: the Jewish people trying to pass through various lands of Ammon and Moab and the land of Edom, etc., on their way to the Holy Land, right? And they just say, "Naberna, we just want to pass through." And we want to use that street in Brooklyn, right? What's that street in Brooklyn?
Highway.
King's Highway,
King's
right?
Highway.
Derech HaMelech, right? Derech
Yeah.
HaMelech, right? Want to pass through on that way. We don't want anything. We'll even pay the exorbitant prices of what food costs in airport bodegas and whatever it is. We won't buy it. Even though we have our own food and drink, we'll buy it from you, right, at an exorbitant price, just to make it worth your while to allow us to pass through. And ultimately, each one of them say no. So this is the first one is about Edom, and they have to. And Edom has earned the courtesy. Well, Ammon and Moab, we end up fighting and winning because of their intransigence. But Edom, being they are descendants from Esav, Esav gets a certain amount of courtesy. We don't confront Esav just yet. Rather, we circumvent, and it ends up taking us all the way around and sending us. We're so close to the land of Canaan, we can almost see it, but we have to end up walking around their entire land. It puts the people in a not great mood. To compound that, Aaron then passes away. When we talk about the process, the beautiful moment that is Aaron's passing, although tragic in that he's passing, but the way he passes is beautiful. He is kissed by God. And it is so remarkable that Moses asks, he says, I would like to go this way also. When it comes my time, this is the way I would like to go. And God grants him this. But now Aaron has passed, and the clouds of glory, which were in the merit of Aaron, cease. At which point, a nation of Amalek, always looking for that opportunity, sees a chance. They strike against the Jewish people and they take captives, right? The Jewish people sally forth, take back the captives, and punish the perpetrators, right? October 7th, right? And at which point the world roundly condemns Israel. No, that's not in there, but we can imagine it's so because that's just the way it is, right? Parsha is
Make
not done.
Balak feel really good.
What?
It didn't make Balak feel really good.
Right, right. As we'll get to, right? Next, the Jewish people complain about the man, right? And they complain about eating the man, and then the a plague of fiery serpents breaks out among them, and they are being bitten by these serpents and dying. Right? At which point God tells Moshe to construct something, right? That ends up saving the people.
With the copper, right.
Right, the copper serpent on the stave, right? Which is the precursor or the model of the kedushas, as it is known in the medical world, right? The symbol of healing, right? They look at it and they're healed. Except, unfortunately, the medical world misses something fundamental about our version of this, because since when does a talisman in Judaism work? Right? What, you look at a copper snake and all of a sudden you're healed? No, but the copper snake is on a nace. It says, nachash nechoshes v'simoso al nace. You will take this copper snake and you will place it onto a nace. Nace generally gets translated as miracle, but now we know that the word nace doesn't mean miracle. It's a borrowed term from this more accurate use of the word, which means a signpost, which is what a miracle is meant to be. A miracle is meant to be to draw your attention to who's really behind things. Nature is God's way of remaining anonymous. Nature is just as much miraculous as a miracle is. The only difference between the two is that nature, one can be lulled into a sense that this is a day that has gone without God's presence, right? Devoid of godliness. And the miracle reminds you, it's like a signpost, no, God was here, or God is here, right? When Moshe is being told to take this copper serpent and place it on this nace, the point of it is that you don't look at the copper serpent, but you're looking upward toward
Hashem,
heaven, right? And you remind yourself about God, and that is the salvation. So that's also in this parsha, right? This whole story about complaining the man, and then this. What else is in this parsha? Well, the second rather of the three songs of the Torah is also in this parsha, Parshat Chukat.
Shirat HaBe'er.
Right, Ali Be'er, the song called Ali Be'er, because what ended up happening is the Jewish people passed through a very tight, narrow valley between two large cliff faces. Unbeknownst to them, in these cliff faces is an army waiting to ambush the Jewish people. You know, every time I say that word, I remember a very bad, what's it called, joke. Dad joke, as they call them nowadays. They say a certain old Yid is asked to be a scout for a particular army, right? And he comes running back and he says, everybody, there's a bacon tree ahead. He looks at us, this craziness, bacon tree. Anyways, they continue on, and all of a sudden, out of the bushes springs a whole bunch of people, attack them. They fortunately are able to beat them back, and they turn back to this fellow and they say, why didn't you give us any warning? You're the scout. He says, I did. I told you there's a bacon tree. He says, what does a bacon tree have to do with an ambush? He says, bacon tree, ambush, it's all the same thing. So it's a dad joke.
Dad joke. It's great.
Anyways, so the point is, there's an ambush for the Jewish people. They don't know about it, but they don't need any warning from any scouts because they have God, and that's all they need. God, before they even make it into this tight valley, takes the two cliff faces and smashes them together and turns the ambush into pate. Now, this would have also been unknown, right? You see, listen, what you do with a hambush, you turn it into pate. That's it. So, so, but the Jewish people would not have even known that a miracle was done for them, except for the fact that the Be'er Shel Miriam, worked its way through the crevices and the nooks and crannies and washed the dead bodies of the would-be ambushers out in front of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people saw the salvation of God that they otherwise wouldn't even known had occurred for them. And so, in gratitude, they sang the praise to the Be'er Shel Miriam, the wellspring of Miriam, for bringing to their attention how God once again saved their lives. And so that's another thing that's in this parsha, and we're still not done with this parsha. This is still just the sixth aliyah. Then we get into the seventh aliyah, and the seventh aliyah is the epic battles that occur between the great two sentinels standing outside of the land of Canaan at the gateway to Canaan. Kings that the whole rest of the world, as the Torah itself tells us, the annals of history up to the point where about how scary these two generals were, Sichon and Og. Sichon of the Amorites and Og of the Bashanites. Right? Og is the famous guy who held on to the ark, survived, the survivor of the original flood, lived all this time, keeps on popping up throughout history. He's the one who wants to get Abraham killed so that he can marry Sarah. So he tells Abraham that his nephew Lot was captured by the four kings, right? Knowing that Abraham would then have to, as a point of honor, go do battle. He did not expect one man to be able to beat the four kings who just finished beating the five kings. So these are, and yet he does. Abraham does, and Og's plots are foiled. And all these various points that he pops up in history till eventually this moment where he actually has a face-to-face confrontation with the Jewish people, and he and Sichon are both giants, true giants. But that doesn't stop the Jewish people. Now with all this forward momentum, and the Jewish people beat Sichon, then beat Og, and now have a huge fertile piece of land, have conquered a fertile piece of land on the eastern bank of the Jordan River. Eventually, this will be the land settled by 2.5 of the tribes, Reuven and Gad, and half of Manasseh. And that is the end of Parshat Chukat. Can you imagine all this in one Torah portion? And what's remarkable is that this week, we're not even done yet. Because alongside that, we will read Parshat Balak. And Parshat Balak is the famous story of Balak, who was the king, who was made the king of Moab for this occasion, because Moab thought, you know what, they're sitting pretty, right? The Jewish people had busted their way out of Egypt and whatever it is, and the splitting of the sea, but they thought, it's okay, we've got our firewall to protect us, the two sentinels, Sichon and Og. And the Jewish people make mincemeat out of Sichon and Og, and now all of a sudden the people of Moab are sweating. They're sweating because if the Jewish people just bulldoze their way through Egypt and now Sichon and Og, do they really stand a chance? So they coronate a new king. Balak maybe has a different approach to this, and he does. He says, let's hire Bilam, who's known as the destroyer of nations. Right? His curses, his mouth, ends up destroying entire nations. Right? And so they hire him. Famous story. He wants to go down because he's arrogant, even though God himself comes to him in a dream and says, hey, this is an ill-fated journey. You're going to curse the people that I have myself blessed. You're not going to be successful here. I'm the one who puts any blessing or curse in anybody's mouth, and you think you're going to be able to place on my favorite people some sort of curse. You got another thing coming. But he has a tremendous amount of arrogance and also a desire for wealth, and he's being offered both. So he says, if I insist on going, you're going to stop me. God says, no, I won't. So he says, okay. And he heads out. And his donkey tries to give him a warning, right? Hello, I'm back. What did we miss? Did we miss? How much did we miss? Hello? Are we back or are we not so back?
No, you didn't freeze. What happened?
Okay.
What happened?
No. It just it first gave me that warning that my connection is unstable, and then it seemed to be that your videos
Oh,
have
okay.
frozen. So I felt that
No,
maybe
it
I
was
was
okay.
all right. So far, so good. Okay.
Uh,
So his donkey wanted to give him a warning. Rather, not the donkey, but an angel that only the donkey saw. And the donkey wanted to first avoid, and then eventually just wanted to avoid the angel at all costs, which is a good idea. If you're going with a nefarious intent, and an angel of God comes before you, give up, right? But no, the donkey was smarter. The stubborn donkey was smarter and more pragmatic than this fellow. Ultimately, the donkey collapses under Bilam. Bilam beats the donkey, and the donkey says, "What are you doing?" To which Bilam says, "I was." It doesn't say that Bilam went, "Whoa, you're talking to me," right? So I'm not sure what's going on with Bilam and if he talks to donkeys on a regular basis. But the bottom line is, he starts arguing with his donkey, and finally, the angel of God talks directly to Bilam and says, "Hello." And he says, "You shouldn't go." And Bilam says, "But God said I could." Says, fine, go. But ultimately, know that whatever I put in your mouth is what you're going to say. Right? He arrives at a place of Balak with all the fanfare, whatever it is. He says, "Build me some altars." He goes, he sees the people. He opens up to curse the people. 3 times he makes the effort. 3 times out come blessings. Each time Balak is getting more and more angry at him because not only are you not putting the Jewish people in a compromised state, you're bolstering them. Right? Ultimately, after multiple failures, Balak says, "Okay, get out of here. I wanted to give you great honor, whatever it is, and financial reward, but clearly God does not want to give it to you." They still can't accept the fact that maybe it has nothing to do with Bilam. Maybe it's just the Jewish people that God wants to bless, and so it's not Bilam's shortcomings or what have you, although prodigious, but it is because ultimately God, as we say, that God turned the blessings into the curses into blessings, because God loves us, loves the Jewish people. This is something they couldn't accept, so it had to be some other reason. It must be that God doesn't want to let you do it, Bilam, and so Bilam's on his way out. But as a parting shot, he has prophecy, and his prophecies end up being the only source in Torah directly to speak about Mashiach.
Right.
Which is
Rabbi,
fascinating.
is it the angel that's talking through Bilam?
No, at
I
that
thought
point,
you
it's
said.
God talking.
Oh,
No, because it's God talking through the angel. When the angel's open and
okay,
speaking, an angel doesn't have agency. For the most part,
right.
whenever we see that an angel talks, it's really God.
Okay.
So it says the angel is saying on behalf, because it's interesting that the word malach, just like the word nace, doesn't really mean miraculous. It just means a signpost. But a miracle is a signpost to God. The word malach does not mean angel; it means messenger,
Right.
messenger of God. So when the
Uh-huh.
angel is speaking, it's really God who's speaking, right? And the angel is just the purveyor of the message,
Mm-hmm.
right? So ultimately, this is so much in content that we are going to cover the Shabbos. But so there's almost like I'll actually allow for, as it were, if there's any in particular, any subject in particular, because we're only going to be able to do about 10 or so minutes on this, but anything in particular of all the things that we talked about that you'd like to do a little bit more of an in-depth exploration of. Again, starting from the red heifer to going to the passing of Miriam and the Moshe's, in a sense, failure at that moment, that costed him going into the land of Israel, having to turn around and avoid Edom, and then Aaron's passing, the battle that ensued after that, the Jewish people complaining about the man and the serpent on the copper serpent on the staff, to eventually Sichon and Og or no, then the ambush that fails and the song for the wellspring, then Sichon and Og, or the story of Balak and Bilam. Anything in particular? Pick a card, any card.
I'll pick the red heifer just because I just recently read that they're still working on it in Israel. You know, they think they got one, but they made a what you call it by accident. You know, they put something on the
Blemish.
ear, some a
Yes, they
blemish.
blemish. Yes, I read
So
that
now they,
article.
so now
I
they
read
don't
that article.
know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, correct. That would definitely be a blemish.
Yeah, but they
Uh,
said the rabbis have to decide.
no, because if it can be healed, right? If you pull that out and then it heals, whether that considered is every scar a blemish, or is certain scars, if it heals pretty much back to whatever it is that considered blemish free enough? Because ultimately, go show me the animal that hasn't tripped, caused itself a gash, had that gash healed, and so we know that animals get inspected, and therefore it's always about what is the size of the scar, etc., and whether this one could be considered repaired, as it were. And so it's like, is it refurbished back to excellent quality, or is it refurbished back, you're buying from
Right.
Amazon or the like, right? Is it refurbished, reconditioned, factory refurbished? What do we call this red heifer if it gets it? All right. So
Right.
are we in agreement that we should talk about the red heifer?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Oh,
No,
1 second. Okay.
what I what I would like for you is to talk about something you won't be talking on Saturday that you wish you had time
No,
to
that's a good idea.
talk about. That wasn't what I would have chosen, but I will bow to Juliana
I like
on this
that.
one. Absolutely.
I love that.
But
So 1 second.
just so you know, what I would have chosen, I have, for years, I've had a little bit of difficulty unpacking the Shira. And I would have liked that, but
Okay.
I bow to Juliana on this one.
Let's do like this. What I'll do is I'll try to give a few minutes on the red heifer and a few minutes on the song. And because these are going to be more tidbits, neither of them would be the main point that I would talk about on Shabbos. How about that?
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. So let's talk about the red heifer. What is the reasoning behind the red heifer? Why is a red heifer the one that God wants? Why does the red heifer have anything to do with purifying somebody who comes into contact with a dead body? And the answer is, there is no reason, because that's the whole point. The Zot Chukat Torah.
No, there is no reason.
That's what
There is no
that's why
reason.
it's a chok.
There is no reason in our ability to comprehend, and not that it applies to all chukim.
Is that what?
Now,
I mean, that's what all the commentators say.
Oh, the Torah says it. We don't have to go to the commentaries. The Torah, Zot Chukat Torah. That's why the name of the parsha is Chukat. Chok are the category of mitzvot that are an exercise in our faith in God. In other words, we don't have a reason for it. We don't have any logic to it. Reason and logic are not always the same thing. Logic is a reason that is self-evident, as it were, right? Which means that the reason is not one that is necessarily meaningful or special or commemorative. It is just because it makes the most intuitive sense. Those are the mitzvot that are called mishpatim, right? Don't kill, don't steal, modesty, being fair in business, and what have you, right? Those are mishpatim. Those are logical mitzvot that their reasoning is self-evident, as it were. It doesn't mean that, by the way, that just because something's self-evident that everybody agrees to it, or doesn't delude themselves about these things. That's just human nature. We're oftentimes not logical. As a spouse, I'm going to deliberately leave this gender neutral, right? a couple comes to a marriage counseling. Marriage counselor says, "How goes the marriage?" And one spouse, again, gender neutral, you can plug in whether you think it's the husband or the wife, says, "Well, it's all psychological. My spouse is the psycho, and I'm logical."
That's another dad
Right?
joke.
Right, there you go. It's another dad joke. Right. So just because something is logical doesn't mean it's automatically universally accepted, but it does mean that its reasoning is self-evident. Then there are mitzvot that have reason, good reason, and in fact, beautiful reasons. They're very meaningful. Shabbos, the holidays, etc., where they're not logical. There's no reason why on the seventh day I should be eating a piece of gefilte fish, right? Having said that, once the Torah gives us and clarifies that this is the day that God rested and He wants to share this day with us, and we commemorate not only God's day of rest, but our relationship with Him, then this becomes a very meaningful and beautiful mitzvah. So there's a lot of reason to do it. Again, it's not driven by logic, it's driven by meaning, it's driven by reason, right? Which is, again, inherently not inherently the same thing. Then you have mitzvahs that the main reason we do them is because God said so. There is no intrinsic reason other than the overarching reason, which is that God said so. Finished. End the conversation. Now, there's a debate, by the way, as to whether God Himself has a reason, or God has instituted this purely as a measure of faith, right? Right. There are some times that we do something like if your spouse says, "Do you really love me? Do you really whatever it is?" If so, and then pick some sort of arbitrary test. In other words, the person who's choosing it doesn't either have a reason, but it just uses it to act as a litmus test, right? Most opinions are not that way. Most opinions say that there is a reason, God has a reason, but He does not deem it necessary to bring out the reason to us, which is something we accept and don't take as a given. That's why we make a blessing on it. We say, "Ata chonein la'adam dat." God, you gift us knowledge and understanding. We don't take for granted that we should be able to understand everything in this world. God is infinite. We are finite. Anytime we do have even the smallest gist and the smallest bit of understanding, that is a gift from God. And that's why we make that bracha, Ata chonein hadat, the one who gifts understanding and knowledge. Every tidbit of understanding and knowledge is a gift from God. Mm. And one category of mitzvahs, God says, I'm going to withhold from you my reason. There is a reason, but I'm going to withhold from this from you, and this is going to be a testament of faith. But there's a higher understanding of that, and that's why it's actually, this paraduma. It's that not only is this God just choosing arbitrarily, let's say, ini, mini, mani, mo, I pick these 10 mitzvahs to be the test of faith. So these are the mitzvahs I'm going to arbitrarily withhold from you the reasoning. No, it oftentimes speaks to a higher caliber of mitzvah. A mitzvah that penetrates so deeply into the soul that to apply reason or logic to it is to denigrate the depth of the mitzvah. And to a certain degree, this is true of, as we said, if somebody turns, I use this metaphor all the time because this exercise all the time because it's very powerful. It makes the point very powerfully. If your children are sitting around and they turn to you and they say, "Mom, Dad, tell me, how did you know? How did you know, right, that you were meant for each other like that?" Right? If you say, "Well, it was logical," right? It just made pragmatic sense, right? There's a living here. I looked into the finances. It worked. It just, you're sleeping on the couch that night, right? Because you just reduced what we have to something that's logical. In other words, logic is a reduction in that case. And as I use, that indicates that what we are talking about is that this thing is supralogical. It's not illogical, it's supralogical. It's higher than logic. And to reduce it to logic is actually to reduce it. So the mitzvahs that are in the state of chukim are mitzvahs that are actually transcend logic. And we want to meet God in that space. We want to meet God there. And so we allow ourselves to springboard even beyond ourselves. There is no in a sense, and this is it's not even going higher, it's going deeper. In other words, think about this point. To do the logical mitzvahs or the mitzvahs with reason and meaning, is to feed the id, right? To feed your ego. It feels good for you. It's meaningful for you. It's logical to you. And if you believe that's as deep as you go as a person, then by all means, all mitzvahs, right? That's where the buck should stop. That's where the train should end, as it were. And you shouldn't be attempting to go any deeper or slash higher. But as famously put by the fifth Chabad Rebbe, Shalom Dov Ber of Lubavitch, who established the academy, the Chabad, the Lubavitch Yeshiva, that not only, and of course, obviously, there was plenty of yeshivas before in Chabad, and obviously the students were all studying in yeshivas, but he's the one who established a structured study of Hasidism built into the academy as a subject on the schedule. He institutionalized the academic study of Hasidism. And he came at a time of a tremendous, as it were, renaissance of philosophy, etc. He was at the time of Freud and all these minds that were basically probing the nature of the person, the nature of reality, all these things. And obviously, many of them were Jewish. It was also the peak, or rather, the peak of enlightenment. This was right before the dark ages of communism, et cetera, et cetera. So you can say the peak of one great threat against the Jewish people, right? The threat of enlightenment, et cetera, right before the start of the next great threat of the Jewish people, which is communism and et cetera. Now, so the Rebbe Rashab was very important for him to establish and institutionalize the study of Hasidus as a philosophy to combat, unfortunately, what's happening in many other yeshivas. There was nothing more damaging to the yeshivas than not the external onerous effort to shut them down, but the more insidious effort. And it wasn't even, as it were, an effort, but the infiltration of what was called bichlach, booklets. In the dormitories, books on philosophy, et cetera, were being passed around from these very brilliant yeshiva students, and it opened up a whole new world to them of secular knowledge. And they were fascinated by it because these were people that appreciated higher learning, et cetera. And entire yeshivas shut down because all their students assimilated to the point where bichlach were considered treif. You were expelled from the yeshiva immediately if you were found in possession of one of these booklets. The one yeshiva that seemed to be immune to this was the Lubavitch Yeshiva, because Lubavitch Yeshiva had built in a robust study of philosophy, and therefore was not affected by a secular approach to philosophy. When the Rebbe Rashab was asked directly what he believes, does he subscribe to, like Sigmund Freud and others, in terms of their philosophy, he says they have some correct ideas. He says the problem is they don't dig deep enough. As far as Sigmund Freud is concerned, the deepest a person goes is their id. And he smiled and he says that if you dug a little deeper, he would have found that deeper than the id is the yid. Right?
Another dad joke.
Yeah, but in this case, a very important dad joke, as it were, because he was saying that the logic and whatever it is don't determine. Give me a moment. The phone is ringing over here. Hello. This is Sander Gaizinski, Chanan's father. Chanan left his cell phone and he's now on a plane to Cincinnati. So he doesn't have a cell phone until we send it to him. I'll tell him, who should I tell him was called for him? Learner. Does Learner have a first name or is just a learner? Okay. I will tell him that Avram David Learner called. All right, Koltiv. Bye. All right. Back to business. So why is this so much more important? In this, as they say, in this is lies everything. Because if as far as you go as the id, then ultimately your ego and its subjective view of this world and its inherently selfish outlook and flawed outlook is the deepest you can go with your nature, the highest you can try to achieve, which is why, according to Sigmund Freud, we're all flawed, right? And accept it. And the quicker you accept it and accept that that's the truth about the people around you, that we are only human, as it were, right? And everything we do is inherently selfish and what have you, then you're going to, because you're going to be more realistic and more pragmatic, you end up going to ultimately be more satisfied in life. Don't have too high of a standard, right? The soft bigotry of low expectations. And comes the Rebbe Rashab and he says, no, chukim. There are mitzvahs that force you to transcend your id, or to go deeper than your id, to your yid. The only reason you'd ostensibly be doing this, the only reason you'd be digging this deep is because there is something to dig deep for. And so the chukim are representations of this. And I pointed out, and I'll say it again, and this is perhaps a point that we can kind of wrap up this aspect of it, even though, Jerry, we didn't really talk about the red heifer as much.
No, this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted.
Okay. But
I didn't want the red heifer. I wanted the chukim. Yeah.
The discussion on the chukim.
Yeah.
But the Rebbe points out something interesting. It says, Zot chukat Torah. Not that this is the biggest chok of the Torah, because of all chukim, this is not just illogical, seemingly, but it's also paradoxical, right? Paradoxical, why?
I don't know.
Because the same formula that is so purifying that it is the only thing that can purify somebody from coming to contact with a dead body, which is why nowadays we don't, we're all impure, because none of us have been sprinkled by the red heifer waters, and all of us have been in contact with a dead body or been under the same roof as a dead body. So we're all in a state of impurity. And this is the only formula. The only formula that purifies somebody is the red heifer. But what's remarkable is the same formula renders all the people who prepare it impure. And that's a paradox.
Huge. That's crazy.
That's a paradox, because it's it purifies those that are impure and impurifies those that are pure, right? The same thing. So that's a paradox. So that makes it not just a chok, but the biggest chok, because it's not just illogical, it's also paradoxical. But the Rebbe points out something fascinating. It doesn't say that this is the biggest chok of the Torah. It says this is the chok. Zot chukat haTorah. This is the chok of the whole Torah. In other words, more than it is just the quantitatively largest version of the chok, because it moves past illogical and goes into paradoxical. There's something here that makes this the banner of all chukim. And if we just said that a chok is the exercise to transcend yourself and transcend your ego, now we understand what the Rebbe means. Because what does the Rebbe explain? And you've heard this from me before, but now we're going to put those 2 points together, that what is remarkable about chukim, about this particular thing, and this is what he says Rashi means. Rashi's not just pointing out the paradox when it talks about the fact that it purifies the impure and impurifies the pure. Rashi's saying this for a different reason. Rashi is saying this because who has to go through this process of preparing the para adumo formula and ultimately become impure for doing so?
The Kohanim.
The Kohanim, the group of people that are singularly most invested in remaining pure. It's important for all citizenry, the Jewish citizenry, but who does it affect the most if they are impure? The Kohanim. And multiple Kohanim become impure in the process of preparing these waters to help one schnook regular citizen become pure.
Uh-huh.
One can make a point that the cost is not worth the return. And so you would expect that if, like, the Kohanim show up for the day and there's the docket, right, of services that have to be accomplished. Here we have, who wants to do the Karban Shlamim? We have 10 Karban Shlamims on schedule today. Karban Shlamim are the offerings that if they're offered, the Kohen gets a big fat steak out of it, right? He gets a piece steak, S-T-A-K-E and S-T-E-A-K, both work. But the Kohen gets a nice takeaway from it, right? Then there's some olas, which everything get burnt, so the Kohen doesn't get to take anything home. And then, we have to sprinkle some of it with the paraduma waters. You would think, right, I want the shlamim. I want the shlamim. Yeah, I can do with some good ribeyes, right? Right? Okay, I'll take the Ola. And you can imagine no volunteers for the paraduma. Well, yeah, which Kohen wants to become impure, right?
Right.
Fascinatingly,
Isn't it?
historically, will I say again?
What's the point? Maybe it's about arrogance or
So that's the beautiful point, is that never do we find that a Kohen balked at taking the role of the paraduma.
Mm-hmm.
We don't find that at all. In fact, the Kohanim relished this opportunity to sacrifice their purity for the sake of somebody else's.
But it's not permanent. It's not permanent, is it?
Sure, it's not permanent, but it does put that Kohen out of his ability to be pure at that moment, and ultimately probably means they miss the rest of their rotation, because each family gets only a certain amount of days to serve in their rotation a year. And yet a Kohen was always willing, and this speaks to the Yid that goes deeper than the Id. Because if all a person is an Id, then of course they will balk.
They wouldn't give it up. Yeah, give up the opportunity. Yeah.
They would balk. They say, I don't want to be the one. No, go find somebody else. To the point of, fine, if there's nobody else, then it has to be fine. Right? But no, the idea that they should cherish the opportunity to sacrifice their purity for the sake of somebody else. That is the chok. That's what a chok is all about, the exercise of something that goes deeper than your inherent ego. Because not just because it's a testament of faith between you and God, that you put aside your own logic and your own understanding for the sake of God's logic and understanding. You put aside your own, as it benefits purity, etc., for the sake of somebody else's, because you have truly managed to transcend yourself, or transcend your ego, not transcend yourself. Ultimately, it is you, and that's the beauty of it. That's what the Rebbe Rasha was pointing out. That deeper in who you are, there's something deeper than your id. There is your yid. And that is, I think, a very powerful message on that. Now, let's quickly turn in overtime over here, or because it's the World Cup, we'll call it stoppage time, right? We're in stoppage time here, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys follow any football. The idea that back in the day it wasn't regulated. What ended up happening is the game was not over when 90 minutes were done. It's whenever the ref actually looked down at his watch and went, oh, shoot. Okay, the game was supposed to be over 2 minutes ago, right? So stoppage time exists because it's not about the 90 minutes. It's about when the ref looks down at his watch. Now, what ended up happening is they said, it's been institutionalized. So now they give an official amount of stoppage time, which is so weird. Like, we're going to officially. And I will tell you, if I was the team that was either winning or it was tied or whatever it is, and we got a goal scored against, and it's in stoppage time, I would be less than happy. Let's just keep it clean. But ultimately, I'm not that very much invested in soccer, so let them have it. Having said that, go USA, because I am a patriot. So in stoppage time, the Ali Be'er. Okay, very, very, very short song compared to the Song of the Sea, or Moshe's song at the end. Ali Be'er Enula, Be'er Chafaruah Sarim. I'm sorry. You could, if you want to follow it on, it's chapter 21, verse 17. You don't have to look if you don't want. Just trust me on this. I will read and translate. Az Yasher Yisrael. So it was at that time that the Jewish people sang Et Hashira Zot, this song, which is the exact same way the Az Yasher begins, right? It's the Song of the Sea. And then they go, and here's the song, right? That's the colon, right? This song, colon. Ali Be'er Enula, rise, O wellspring, right? So so that we may commemorate it. Be'er Chafaruah Sarim, Karua Nedivei Ha'am, a wellspring dug by princes, by great people of nobility, right? That was excavated by the chosen among the nation. And that's really it. And kind of is carved out of their divans. Now, and that's it. In fact, the end of the verse is already this Midbar Matana, and from Midbar they went to Matana, Matana, Lechiel. These are various stages along the journeys. So we don't even finish the verse with the song. We're actually moving on to the next discussion. Now, one thing to mention about this: who are they praising?
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, because ultimately, who did the miracle? What was the miracle? The miracle was the fact that these mountain cliffs came together, killed all the enemies, and the Jewish people were saved, which is obviously God's doing. The only thing that this Be'er did, that this wellspring did, was wash the evidence up to the feet of the Jewish people, so that they became aware of it. Right? So two things. Again, isn't that not the main point, the main miracle? If they want to sing praises, the main praise to sing is about the salvation, not the evidence of the salvation, number one. Number two, even the evidence of the salvation that was washed up by the wellspring is an inanimate object. It's ultimately God there too. So for all these reasons, it seems to be their praise is going to the wrong address. Right? The answer to that is, in this extreme, this is a kal v'chomer, an if fiortiori, right? Did I say that correctly, counselor?
Yeah, well enough.
For shiori.
Fiortiori.
For shiori.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know, because then I will not mispronounce it going forward. Fiortiori.
Certainly.
Okay. That's, as I said, you just have to be holding a tissue. Anyways, okay. Anyways, I'll just stick to the Hebrew. Kal v'chomer.
Okay.
The Torah wants to highlight this, not to say the Jewish people gave misplaced praise, but to speak to this point of how much the Jewish people personify their name, which is Yehudim, people that are grateful. Right?
Right.
We didn't praise the well in place of God. We praised everything all the way down to the well. All aspects. And the Torah, again, does not recount every event that occurred, even significant. You know why? You know what the proof is? This parsha is the proof. Do you know what happens over the course of this parsha as well? You know those 40 years that the Jewish people were in the desert?
Everybody dies out.
And all that, but those 40 years, they just, by the way, happened in the span of this parsha, and you missed it entirely. Blinked and you missed it. Last parsha, the Jewish people were on which side of that 40-year sentence?
Beginning.
The beginning side of it, right? Right after the spies, right, which was when the sentence was declared, was Korach. That's the whole parsha, right? So right at the beginning, Sichon and Og and the Edom and all those are occurring where? When the Jewish people are about to enter into the land.
Right.
Right, we're on the edge.
We're on the other end of the 40 years, ladies and gentlemen, or in this case, ladies.
Right.
Where do the 40 years go? We don't care. Not that we don't care, but the Torah doesn't feel a need to recount events simply for events. The Torah recounts lessons and messages to us. This is not a history book. So, Paula, to your point, their praise to God is something we know they do. We don't have to beat that point in again. We know this. We know the Jewish people sing the praises of God. We're making the point that they even took the time to praise the well for its role, however small and insignificant in this is. And we take the point, we make this to say that they do acknowledge that a role is played in when the miracle is made clear to you, because at that point it becomes obvious to see the hand of God as a gift, right? They did benefit from the great miracle, but every once in a while we like to see the open hand of God. As the Rebbe would say often, you should not only have good blessing, but you should see how it's good blessing.
Revealed.
Why? What does it matter? What does it matter if I see it or I don't see it, as long as I have it? And the answer is because when you see it, then you get to feel God's hug. Right? You get to have that nace, that signpost, that proof of God's love for you. And the vehicle of that nace, of the signpost in this case, was the bear. And so, yes, did it play a primary role in the main event? No. Did it play a primary role in making the event a nace, a clear and obvious signpost towards God's love and solicitousness for us? Yes, it did. And so we sing its praise because we appreciate not only that the miracle was done for us, but the miracle was done that we were made aware, so that we can have that sense, that open and apparent sense. Like I will tell you.
But Rabbi, isn't that the reveal? Like we always say that you should have revealed goodness and revealed,
right.
Yeah.
And also, it's a very important
Galui.
message in relationship counseling.
True.
Don't just love your spouse. Make sure your spouse is aware how much you love them. Do it in ways, and I'll tell you, every once in a while it is, and vice versa. If you are the spouse receiving things, make a point to acknowledge when there was a blatant moment of an act of love toward you. Because why should we need it? This should be a given in both directions, a given that they do this for me, and a given that it happens, and vice versa, etc. Why do I need to go through the song, dance, and pony show, as it were? Right? I should just be able to
take things for granted.
Take for granted that God will be there for me and will be there for him, etc., etc. Does he really need the thank you all the time? No, but we need to say again, the thank you is more for us to be able to appreciate and to really make a point of seeing that more and more in our lives, to make the effort to try and turn and see God's loving hand in our lives. Yes, Juliana, and then Paula, and then I'm going to have to go 1 second.
It seems to me this is one
Give
of
me
the
one
most...
moment. Hello? Conan left his phone here. He's not going to have it until I mail it to him. He's arriving at 3:45 p.m. Okay, who is this? Shalom David Mavzikov. He's now in your room, which is what he wanted. Okay, then that's good news. All right. I will make sure to let him know. And when I will let him know, then I will deserve praise. Like the Be'er from this week's Parsha that let the people know that Hashem had done something good for them, right? Yeah, there now. See, you got a Dvartate. You didn't even explain. All right. Kultiv. Bye.
Very good. You wove it in.
He definitely thinks that Hanan has a very weird father. Anyways.
I just wanted to say how profound I think this idea is, and how different it is from every other religion in the sense that so often people think, oh, you have to give sacrifices to God, you have to praise him and so on. The model being an emperor kind of thing. And it's right there in the very beginning in Genesis that God wanted to have man uh, understand. He's made him in his own image, and he wanted for someone like him in the sense of knowing, being grateful for the world that he created. And it's not for God. It is and it isn't. And unless you say, this is good, I'm grateful for this, you yourself don't know. And so that is just so profound because so often people say, oh, I don't want anybody telling me what to do. And that's not the point. The point is to be grateful is an act that involves a reciprocity. And it's you and God and the world, and it's quite complex, but it's really very profound. And
Absolutely,
and it's true in personal relations as well.
without
We
a
were
doubt.
talking earlier about friendship and how reciprocity is so basic and so difficult to distinguish from from like a contractual relationship. I do this, you do that. Very different.
Yes,
I
I think
thou
you were
kind
saying.
of comes close, but not even, not really.
No, I think you're saying something very, very important and profound, which is, as you said, in a business relationship, reciprocity is the compact, right? It's the
Right,
only reason we're doing this.
right,
So ultimately, it's
right.
ultimately selfish. I only put in
Yeah,
because with the expectation
right,
to get out,
right.
right? And in a relationship, a loving relationship, I put in because I want you to have. I want to give.
Yeah,
I
and
want to
I
give,
get
right?
at the same
I get
time.
by I get in
Yeah,
my giving, et cetera, et cetera. The
yeah,
only thing I want from you is for you to see that I'm giving.
right.
I want you to appreciate that these are testaments to my love to you, right? And that is what it is. When we are saying thank you to God, it's not because God is demanding, it is because ultimately um, uh, Hashem wants us to know in these moments that we appreciate how deeply He loves us. Right? So we want when we take our kids on a trip, et cetera, et cetera. It's not because we have anything we want out of it. The one thing we want is our kids to really appreciate that we are doing it because we love them. Give me one moment now. Nachami's on my phone. Hello. Yes. Yes. They're on the plane. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to work on it, but I'm just in the middle of a class. Let me finish up and then. But yes. All right. Bye. So all right. So to kind of wrap up before we get another call, uh, you know what's remarkable? It's not like this is. I'm not going to say I'm not. I don't get a lot of phone calls throughout the day, but it's remarkable how everybody calls.
at
It's
once.
always that way. Always that way. You always get the phone call when you're elbow deep in dough or in something, right? Right? You can't grab the phone, etc. All right, but yes, it is a profound aspect of Yiddishkeit, Judaism, where it is not a contract, as it were. It's a relationship you have with Hashem, and what we give, what both sides give, is not with the expectation of what I get will get back from it, but ultimately that actually makes the other one, the one on the receiving end, even more responsible to show and to appreciate
Well,
because that's
with that in mind, I will forfeit my question because I want you to go on and do whatever it is you have to do. We can talk about this later.
Paul. Are you around on Shabbos?
I will be. I hope to be.
Good.
Please, God.
So then I will only accept your forfeiture as a pause and not and not a sacrifice. We just said we're not sacrificing. Okay.
We made a deal. All right. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, everybody.
Bye. Thank
Shabbat
you so
shalom.
much, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat
All the
shalom.
best. Shabbat shalom.